you need to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. You know, things are going to break. People need to be outside of their comfort zones, most definitely in a startup environment. I started in 1995, I think, at my IT story, working for Remedy, which was a hugely successful company, which we took to IPO.
Oh, really?
I think I was number 3 or number 4 in Europe, and we got to about 250, 300 people in Europe and about 2,000 worldwide. Had a great IPO. I moved on to another company called Vignette, which went from 16 to 89 to $367 million worth of revenue in 3 years, which was fantastic. Although, to be fair, that was in the internet, the .com crazy times. But we had a market cap of approaching 20 billion, I think, with about 1,500 people in the company. So that was an amazing amount of fun, which culminated in me moving over to the US to run the strategic accounts group from San Francisco. And then I've worked for a bunch of startups since, having fallen into one when I was 25 years old. You know, I got very comfortable, I guess, in what other people would term uncomfortable situations, you know, when it's kind of like the Wild West and there's not a lot of resource and so on. So I've always worked for startups. I've done 4 IPOs now, including Omniture, which obviously was acquired by Adobe for 1.8 billion, wow, where I was running the alliances team across EMEA. And I'm now at Orca Security, which I'm very much hoping is going to be my 5th IPO. And everything's going incredibly well. When I started 2.5 months ago, I think we were about 65, 70 people. We're probably about 120 now. And I suspect we'll double sometime in the next 6 months.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And for the purpose of the blog, kind of what do Orca Security do? Where are you in kind of funding rounds, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, Orca is a holistic cloud security platform. We've raised $300 million in venture funding, 210 million of that from Capital G, also known as Google Ventures. You're probably familiar with those guys.
Awesome.
And what we're bringing to the table is agentless cloud security. So going up against some of the legacy platforms where you have to install agents on every single instance in the cloud, which obviously has a performance overhead and a maintenance overhead and a configuration overhead, etc.
Awesome, fantastic. And obviously, you said that you've been in kind of SaaS for quite some time now. What about SaaS that's kind of made you stay there and work in the sales departments of different SaaS companies?
I think it's hard not to be in SaaS today. I think that's the way everything's going. I was lucky enough to be in one of the early SaaS companies at Omniture, which I think was the first big true SaaS acquisition made by Adobe, which of course is very well known for acquisitions, particularly in the MarTech space, of course.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the way to go. It's the fastest growing area. And if you look at, you know, my journey to Orca, the 2 fastest growing areas in this IT economy of ours are security, from a technology perspective, and then from a broader perspective, cloud. And you put them together and have cloud security, it's absolutely the right place to be. And if you've got compelling technology with great ROI that can be derived, it just makes a perfect amount of sense. So when I saw Orca do its 2nd round of funding, I immediately reached out and said, hey, I really need to join the company. Who do I speak to?
Yeah, interesting, awesome. Like, another question would kind of be like, what is that that growth to that journey to IPO like? Like, is it the kind of SaaS is one of those businesses where it's like it just skyrockets, right? Compared to any other business. So I'm interested in kind of what that was like for you, taking a company and then going all the way to IPO. That must have been quite something.
It's a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, and I genuinely mean it. You need to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. You know, things are going to break. People need to be outside of their comfort zones, most definitely in a startup environment, particularly when we're a little lucky for us in EMEA, as we're an Israeli headquartered company. So we have a lot of people that we can speak to in our time zone to rely on who give us fantastic support. I've usually worked for US companies, either Austin, Texas, or Orem, Utah, or typically Silicon Valley in California. And you're 7 or 8 hours and 6,000 miles removed from those people. So you just got to be grown-ups and get on with it, and be prepared to work late hours to get the help that you need. But I think also you you build your network very, very quickly. You find the people that can help you to accomplish what you need to do in order for the region to be successful. People aren't going to hand things to you on a plate. Everyone is busy being busy, trying to scale their own part of the organization and close net new clients. And so finding and building your own internal network is incredibly important, because otherwise it's incredibly challenging to get things done. And from that perspective, hiring, I'm always looking to hire people that have startup experience, even if they might come from Microsoft or Oracle or SAP or something, that's fine. But they need to have that startup experience somewhere in their CV, because otherwise they're just going to find it very challenging, and they're going to be a bit of a deer in the headlights. And it's not to say they won't be able to cope with it, but it'll just be so much more challenging for them compared to someone that's been through the mill in a startup environment already.
Okay, perfect. Then kind of on that, that's a perfect segue into the questions. Like, what defines an A player? So you're saying somebody who has experience, but kind of what primary metric is chosen, and kind of what the sub metrics you'd say that are used to create let's say, a template for an A player.
Yeah, well, let me answer it by maybe putting it this way. I've changed my view of hiring over the years. It used to be, give me people, AEs, put AEs in front of me that have domain experience, whether it's MarTech, for example, online retail or cybersecurity or whatever the genre might be, and give me people that have a consistent success record, a track record of consistently high P60s. It's interesting, actually. If you ask people for high P60s, they'll tell you all kinds of nice things, and then if you leave a passing comment, hey, listen, bring 3 or 4 of those amazing P60s to the next interview, it's kind of interesting how few people will turn up with those. So but yeah, and of course anyone can get lucky for a year or two, right? You can close a big deal. I know certain people that have spent their entire careers talking about one big deal that they did and constantly referencing back to that. People that are consistently successful are slightly different. That said, I've kind of, as I mentioned, changed my view a little bit. And it's based on hiring some people that I took a little bit of a punt on a few years ago, who paid me back in absolute spades. And now what I look for is, give me people that are incredibly bright, and give me people that are just really, really dynamic, the kind of people that do at least one extra thing per day than the competition does.
Yeah.
If someone's extremely bright, our stuff at Orca Security is not hard to understand. It's actually very easy to understand. A bright person can pick this up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But you can't invent energy in someone. If someone's experienced and good, but no offense to them, but perhaps a bit of a plodder, that's not necessarily for me. I'd rather have someone that just comes across as being full of beans, full of energy, very, very dynamic. And if they're super bright, they can learn anything.
Yeah, that's I'm kind of finding that I'm obviously young in this kind of world of SaaS and sales, but I'm realizing that a lot of it is to do with confidence and your interpersonal skills and being able to build a kind of rapport with people. So it's super important. You kind of mentioned you hear some people saying, "Oh, I did this one big sale, blah blah blah." Are there any other metrics that when you're looking at your reps, you're like, right, we need this, this, and this, or do you kind of just get a feel from their energy more so?
Yeah, I think you do. I don't necessarily look for specific metrics, because anyone can put bullet points down on a piece of paper or articulate those to you. And remember, salespeople are the best people at selling what? Themselves, right? And so in an interview process, it's I look at back channel references very, very significantly. Those are the most important. References are important, of course, but I always look at back channel references as well. But let me tell you some of the things I look for and try to develop in salespeople that might answer the question at a slightly more broad level.
Okay.
One of the things I look for and also try to develop is sales reps that are just very, very good at time management. And understanding what is important now, that the kind of AE or sales rep, whatever you want to call it, that is just ruthless in qualifying deals, because it's very easy to spend time talking to prospects or suspects or possibly even existing clients and just having discussions and trying to get someone into your sales cycle rather than you being in their buy cycle is what's important. And so it's, like I said, very easy to have multiple chats and think you're doing great stuff. But then you look at your forecast and you think, there's not really a lot there, is there? There's not a lot that's quite juicy in that forecast. So just being ruthless in time management and where you spend your time is one of the things that I try and coach people to do. But also some of the things that I ask people about specific instances when I interview them about how they're ruthless in time management and why their time management is different necessarily from someone else's.
Interesting. So like, I think time management is the key in many avenues in life. But I noticed you say kind of like looking at forecasting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you measure reps success rate on whether we hit target or et cetera, or is it, you also said like kind of time management is important.
Yep.
So would that be, I guess, a fresh kind of metric is sales velocity, right? Is like how fast the deal is in the pipeline and goes through, and then it turns into a sale.
Yep.
Is this what you're kind of alluding to, or?
So what I'm looking for with sales reps is for them to be able to articulate to me, and there are various different, qualification and sales strategies out there. You may have heard of, spin selling and medic and Scotsman, and most recently, it's very fashionable to talk about the challenger sale. There's a lot of different methodologies and probably 1,000 books published every single year on how to be better at selling. And I think it always boils down at the beginning to qualification. And there's something that I learned, I think, back at Remedy when I was 25 years old, which is the 3 W's, which has always stuck with me. And you may well have heard of these before. It's the 3 whys, right? Why should we do anything? Why should the customer do anything? Why should they do it now? And why should they do it with us, right? And any sales rep should ask themselves that question quickly once they're getting into the sales cycle with a client. Because if they want to do something, and they really want to do it with you, but they're stuck with another vendor for the next 3 years, for example, or there's just clearly zero budget for the next 6 to 12 months, then prioritize your time elsewhere. It's not, keep in touch, of course, but that's not a priority now. That's not something that's going to necessarily close this financial year. So always be asking those questions. It just makes perfect sense. It's really easy. It's totally idiot proof. And if you can ask those questions and get the right answers, you're not necessarily going to win the deal, but it just helps you to be able to understand, where you are in that sales process and whether you should continue spending time on this. Does that make sense? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? It's like there's an old kind of saying in sales that like everyone's sellable. So, everyone wants their product. You just need to convince them that they need it, but it's not the reality. Right. There's a certain amount of people that want it, and there's a certain amount of people who don't need it. So I think that kind of saying is dying quite fast in the modern world of sales.
Yep.
But I was wondering, kind of, how do you compare? If you call one an A player, another one a B player.
Yep.
Say someone who's maybe slightly subpar. How do you spot where one is stronger and where one is weaker? And what do you believe are the stronger, let's say, metrics? What are the metrics that you value in that sense?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's around communication. I've always had this adage of, hire the very best people and trust them, right? So I don't view myself as a micromanager. I was micromanaged once in my career a long time ago. I didn't enjoy it, by a very, very poor manager at the time in rather a boring company that will remain nameless. But hire the best people you can and trust them, right? And salespeople are all slightly different. Some are more into building relationships, and some are more technically gifted or technically competent. And others just have so much energy. They do 10 things more per day than their competition does. So manage the individual. Don't manage everyone in exactly the same way. Some people really need a bit of a kick, a bit of a push. Other people just need praise, and other people just need to be led. So it's all different. I think that I really appreciate communication. I've always believed in the concept of manage your manager. I think I've always managed my managers really well, to the extent that they stay off my back in the right way, because I'm giving them the information that they need. I'm being proactive in the communication flow. And I expect and require the same from reps, and good reps will manage me well by not having to have me dip into their accounts every 5 minutes, by telling me what's going on, making me understand where they are in the strategic deals, in the bigger deals, and making sure that they do the basics right. Hygiene in a CRM system, for example. I don't expect to have to call someone at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday because the CEO has called me and wants a specific update on a deal. I should be able to just look in the CRM system and say, do you know what? Here's where we are right now. And so good AEs just keep me off their backs by keeping the CRM system up to date, putting in the notes with religious levels of integrity, and just providing that discipline so that I can stay off their back and they can concentrate on selling. At the same time, I think a good manager, in return, provides air cover to sales reps. We've heard this term a lot in the sales world, and what that means is you tend to get a lot of stuff coming down, a lot of Excel spreadsheets and everything else. Fill those in to the extent you can with the information you've already proactively received from your reps, so that you don't have to push that information down. You don't want them to be filling in 5, 6, 7, 8 different spreadsheets every single week. You want them to be doing the stuff that they're paid to do, which is to go and find net new opportunities, to qualify those opportunities, to get those opportunities into our sales cycle, to start closing them down, and then to negotiate really good deals for the company. And to the extent that I can be parachuted into any part of that process, I'm extremely happy to do so, and I very much want to be. I don't need to be in every single deal because obviously there's a time element there. But I think a good manager provides air cover, if that makes sense, for their reps. And in return, you expect consistent upward communication from your reps in where they are in those deals.
Yeah, that's a great answer, actually. How do you turn the process into something that is tangible and coachable?
So I have an AE charter.
Okay.
I was a little hesitant to mention that because I haven't actually presented it to my reps yet, because we're in the middle of hiring a few, and I want to do it in one hit, so to speak. But I put an AE charter together, which is basically what are my expectations. So it's very, very clear from an AE's perspective what I expect and require from them from day one.
Okay.
And those are really basic things, right? Listen, I need involvement in the sales process, right? I can either come and ask you, or you can tell me. I'd much rather you tell me, because then I'm just off your back, right? I can't help you if I can't see what's going on. So make a note, my initial expectation is involvement in the sales process, and you choose which deals and where, but I need to understand how we're doing in clients, and I need to understand how you're doing so I can help you and help develop you. That's my job as a manager. The second expectation is around, good corporate citizenry. And what I mean by that is integrity. Be respectful and professional to your colleagues and to your clients.
Yeah.
It goes without saying, but what it means is I'm setting the expectation from day one. Just do the right thing. Be professional, have integrity. And the third thing is be a sales professional. And what I mean by that is, do the forecasting right, do the CRM hygiene, give me clarity on where we are in the sales process. And I think if I can set those expectations correctly, that there's more to the AE charter than those, but those are the sort of the main points. There's a lot in there about partners, for example. There's a lot in there about time management. But those are the basics. And I think if you set the expectation right with people from the beginning, then they know what it is that you want. And then you can start to spot the areas where they need help and help to coach them and to lead them to get them to be better in those areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. I think it's also good that you said, have integrity, and that's kind of it. Like I say, in sales, excuse me, sales. I've been in sales now for 2 months, and it's kind of like has this old stigma, right, of like this type of salesperson, blah, 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 sell anything to anybody. And what I'm realizing is the actual reality of like modern sales, especially in SaaS and things. It's about having honesty and integrity, and selling a product to someone that it betters their company or their life, or however you like to put it. So I think that's an important something to pick on.
Yeah, the days of drive-by selling are gone, right? With
Yeah.
SaaS and the subscription economy, right? You don't look after your customers, you don't look after your clients. Guess what?
Yes,
They're not
no.
going to renew.
Exactly.
And what I try and coach people in is, listen, speak to your clients with regularity, right? Even if you have an account management team or a customer success team, it is not just their job to look after clients and make sure they renew. As a sales rep, it's your job as well. And it's your job for a couple of reasons. Number one, because where do we get a lot of our business from in any company? It's upsell, right? And you can't do that upsell unless you're building relationships with the end user, understanding the nuggets of where you can go and help fit a particular need that might be emerging, or helping to define how you can replace some legacy technology that they may have and build another use case. So a considerable part of it is upsell. But also remember, companies like mine, we are in the rip and replace game to a large extent. We are replacing legacy agent-based security technology from a cloud security perspective. And that's a very lucrative amount of business for us. There's a lot of greenfield and cloud native, of course, that's also very lucrative for us as well. But we're replacing a lot of legacy technology. And so from that point of view, the SaaS economy is fantastic because there is always a budget available, right? And we can replace someone and use that budget. And so what I try and coach salespeople is, don't assume that our competition isn't doing that to us. Don't assume that they're not sniffing around those clients, trying to understand when the renewal date comes in, give them a better deal, give them something extra in terms of value if they can, although that may be hard for them in their case. But the point is, do not assume that a client's going to automatically renew just because you think we have a good relationship with them and the customer success team is doing a good job. You need to build that relationship. You need to build that trust, partly from an upsell perspective, but also partly from a defensive perspective, to make sure that the client renews. And they're only going to do that if you have that relationship and if you give them good service.
Yeah, totally agree. And like you say, upselling in SaaS is massive, right? It's like the customer success department is just as important as any other department, because if not more important, because upskilling is huge, and the level and the rate at which these SaaS companies grow is incredible. Within years, months, or whatever, it just is so quick and like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
Just one other quick thing. You asked me about metrics, and I forgot to answer your question fully earlier, so my apologies. Some of the metrics I look for in terms of good sales players is net new pipeline creation. That's what I'm always looking at as well. Who's creating opportunities? And it's very easy to see whether you're using HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever it might be. From a CRM perspective, it's just easy to see who's creating net new opportunities and what's the source of those opportunities. If absolutely everything is coming from the SDR community, for example, or from the partner community, and it's glaringly obvious that nothing's being created just by the sales rep, that tells you one thing: they're not doing any of their own proactive outreach.
Yeah.
And of course, you don't want sales reps spending all of their time doing outreach. You want them closing deals and working on pipeline, of course. But to an extent, you do want them to use their own network. You do want them to be finding net new opportunities to work, and you do want them to be looking on LinkedIn and building relationships there. And so I'm always looking for what is the source of opportunity creation, and how many net new opportunities is an AE creating per quarter. And then aside from that, the obvious metric is, what does your total pipeline look like for the quarter and for the financial year, and how you track into that pipeline? I refer to the AE charter again as well. I ask AEs to always be aware and to be able to articulate where they are from a numbers perspective at any point in time. And it's not because I'm testing them. I don't necessarily want them to be able to say, well, actually, boss, I'm at 64.6% of my quota and, $1.x million precisely. You can give me round figures, that's fine. The point is, if you know where you are with your number and you understand where you are with your number, then by definition, you understand what it is you still have to do. And then your brain's tracking to what it is you need to fill the hole and to make your quota. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. How do you kind of view these metrics? You mentioned pipeline creation, etc. How do you view these metrics? Is it just through Salesforce?
It is. I think you need one source of truth, particularly in an environment where you are growing so quickly and there's so many different Excel forms flying around and everything else. I think you need a source of truth. Because otherwise you've just got too many data sources and there's too much other stuff that you need to concentrate on in terms of building the business, interviewing people, finding the right partners, for example, a myriad of other things. So I think just using Salesforce for us right now is the key. It's just easy. It makes sense. And, you know, there is this wonderful old adage of if it ain't in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And I tend to agree.
Yeah, that's very true. Salesforce is a pretty big one. But just kind of my final question would be like, how do you? This is quite an interesting one. How do you distinguish between an individual? How do you distinguish between individual weakness and a sales team weakness?
Yeah, like I said, all reps are different, right? So
Yeah,
it's not one size fits all. You've got to manage people based upon their strengths and their weaknesses. And good leaders, and I'm by no means the best, but good leaders will understand someone's weaknesses, but also importantly understand their strengths and leave them alone in the areas that they don't need help in, and help coach them where they do need help. And so I'm always looking at what is a person's time management like? You know, are they being ruthless in qualification? You know, do they understand what's important now? I'm always looking at, you know, the qualification basics, you know, from I talked about the 3 Ws perspective. Do they understand from the client's perspective why they should do anything, you know, why they should do it now, and why they should potentially do it with us? I'm always looking at the ability of the AE, the sales rep, to are they building relationships internally? You know, are they well respected? Do they get things done that other people might take a week to do because they have a great relationship somewhere at HQ or somewhere in the US? And again, in startups, it's about building relationships. In my first 2 weeks in the company, I pretty much did nothing other than invite myself to one-to-one meetings with people that I thought could help me, and people that I needed to build my network and relationships with. So, you know, are they building relationships internally to help them get things done? Are they well respected? Can they make people do things for them that they otherwise might not do, or otherwise might follow some longer process? And also, lastly, are they building relationships? We spoke about this earlier with their clients. How well do they understand what's going on in their clients? Because that's where the upsell is going to come from, and that's where we're going to protect our clients from, you know, being snapped up by someone else with some competitive technology.
interesting. So you put a lot of emphasis on networking and communication because my father worked in working kind of the corporate world quite some time, and
Yep.
he always used to put emphasis on me always kind of network everybody. You kind of need to build the bigger network as you possibly can. And he was never on LinkedIn, but in a modern world where you have LinkedIn, I mean, there's kind of like no excuses not to network with as many people as possible and try and get ideas off of as many people as possible. So it's like for me, like a lot of my friends will be on Instagram and things like that, and
Yep.
I'm quite often on LinkedIn because there's so much value on like some of these kind of mentors that are on there, and the value that they add on there is awesome. And you know, you're always kind of one connection away from someone that can really help you, or you know, all these different things.
Your external network is incredibly important. I think your internal network is 10 times more important, because think
Yeah,
about it. If every other manager has the same viewpoint as I do, which is hire the best possible people you can and trust them to do their job, then it means you've got a load of rock stars in the organization, and those people can help you. You know, why go into battle alone when you can go into battle with a fantastic platoon, as it were, of brilliant resource? So
yeah,
build your internal network, find the people that can help you get things done, find the people that will give you a reference customer very easily, for example, find the people in legal that, you know, just the rock star A players that can help you make things happen fast. You know, legal, finance, HR, what customer success manager, whatever it may be. Find the right people that can help you build those relationships. And that goes both ways, right? Those people need you as well. So go out of your
yeah.
way to do things for other people as well. I frown a lot on you see a lot of posts on LinkedIn, for example, about prioritizing, and I spoke about prioritizing earlier, but prioritizing goes both ways as well. One of the challenges with prioritizing is people may say, well, I'm ruthless at prioritizing, and these are the top 10 things I need to do. But just because something is not a priority to you doesn't mean that it's not a priority to someone else. And if that
Okay,
someone else is in your network, and they've always made time and put focus there for you, you need to repay that as well, because that's how you build a relationship, right? It goes both ways. So making a priority of doing something for someone else that can help you in the future, even if you get nothing from that at this particular time, needs to go, you know, close, maybe not at the top of your list of what to do today, but pretty close. So
yeah,
there is a balance in time management or priority setting.
definitely. And obviously, I noticed you saying that you kind of, since you've been at Orca, you've communicated out, all your colleagues and made sure that you're kind of constantly speaking to them. How have you found that in a COVID world? Because I guess that it can be quite easy not to kind of have a relationship with your colleagues and just maybe teams them now and again. So obviously, I'm assuming that this is something that you've carried throughout your entire career, where you've tried to build strong relationships with your colleagues. So how have you found that, out of interest?
It's harder, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie and say it's just as easy with you can. What I have found actually with remote comms is you can get more done. You can pack in a whole bunch of Zoom meetings rather than driving somewhere or going somewhere or getting on a plane or spending time doing a lunch when you could do a 20-minute Zoom or whatnot. It's not the same, and I ideally hope it returns quickly. I think we're all trying our best, and we've, I'm resisting. I'm really trying to resist using the term "the new normal." There, I've just said it. But I think it's not the same. It is a shame. It's much better to get people together. So in my team, we're actually going to do a team lunch pretty soon. I think it's about the right time now.
Nice.
When you meet someone, let's say you've been working with someone for 6 months and you're in the UK and they're in Israel or California or whatnot. When you meet someone in the flesh, your relationship fundamentally changes pretty much forever, even if you never meet them again. And thereafter, when you're on the phone or on a Zoom or a Google Hangout or a Teams meeting or whatever it might be, you have a different relationship just because you've met in the flesh in the past. And I think that's what I'm very excited to do, to finally be able to meet some of my colleagues, particularly in Israel and the US, as soon as I can.
Interesting. Why do you say that about meeting them in the flesh? What do you think it is?
I don't know. It's one of those intangibles. I think it's just, I think humans just thrive off social contact, and I think meeting people in the flesh just makes so much difference. It's why I think we're all getting a little bit bored of doing virtual beers, right, and virtual dinners.
Yeah, getting very bored.
And all the rest of it. We've done it now, and it was entertaining for a while, and so on. But I truly hope that we can get through this, and we'll be able to cope. What is fantastic is the fact that we have all coped so incredibly well, and maybe we're spoilt in this IT community that we work in, but we've all coped so extremely well, and we made that rapid shift. I think far better than maybe other industries did, and because we have the tools and the capability for it, right? We're sort of IT native, but it's been impressive how well we've been able to cope. Many companies, ours included, probably call themselves COVID companies.
Yeah.
And we've managed to thrive. So, and with customer relationships as well. But yeah, like I said, I hope it returns soon.
100%. Perfect, Andrew. Thank you very much for your time.